Like when you walk into a room, if you're a person that does comparison, you will be simultaneously diminished and prideful.
Hey, welcome to Ascend the Hill with Jeremy Austill. I'm Jonathan. This is Pastor Jeremy. How's it going?
It's good. Having a good day.
Yeah.
It's I always start by talking about the weather.
I
I feel
know.
like that is like the default. I don't know what to say. So let's talk about the weather. So I'm not going to talk about the weather.
Yep.
I'm gonna let you take us where we're going today.
Yeah, well, we had a good weekend with Serve Day.
Yes.
And helping out not only our Guatemala missions trip, but also our friends over in TYM at Camp Jackson. And that was a great day over at the camp, just out in nature.
Yes.
Making it happen.
Everybody's allergies. There's something about that camp property that provokes everybody's allergies.
I know.
But it was a good day. Just from a real personal level, it really filled my heart to see our Cornerstone family investing in something that myself and my family have spent a decade immersing ourselves in at Camp Jackson, and it's awesome. I just was talking to one of our facilities team members, and on Serve Day, he was putting up lights. He was installing lights around the basketball court area, and it's an area that, students always congregate after service when we're doing concessions break and all of that. And I thought, man, for 10 years, I was trying to get more lighting out here. And I guess it took me being the pastor of Cornerstone for us to get more lights around the basketball court. And so it was a joy for me to see our church family, skilled workers, people that have spent a lifetime developing skills, and seeing them invest that skill into that property.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was cleaning, it was organizing, it was throwing things in dumpsters that needed to be hauled off. And then it was stuff like, putting fans up in areas where students congregate because it gets really hot, and to be able to have that as a nice little amenity. So I was just really proud. And of course, I just got hit with a ton of nostalgia. I can't walk into the sanctuary. I mean, it's the gym, it's the tabernacle, it's the sanctuary, it's the whatever you want to call it. That building where I think I checked. I led 269 services in that building.
Oh, wow.
And that's at a minimum 3 hours. And so I had done the math. I spent nearly 35 full days, 24-hour increments, like in that room.
Yeah.
During worship and preaching and altar ministry. But I can't walk in that room without feeling a little emotional and overwhelmed. And I say that, I don't want anybody from Cornerstone to, hear that and think, well, I'm, wish I was doing that. I don't because with all of that nostalgia and all of those great experiences in the presence of the Lord, like that was a season of our life. And I knew that season was coming to an end, probably a couple of years before it came to an end. The Lord has a way of just beginning to subtly turn you and prepare you.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, like it's a special place. I don't know if some of our team that was there on Saturday noticed or walked in and observed, but the concrete floor of camp, years ago when we would do the week of prep with our interns, we would pray on the nightly, and then we would do what we called anointing oil nights. I mean, not an exactly original name, but we would take oil and we would pray over everything in the room. And there's messages, there's statements about the Lord and about his call and about following him that young men and women for close to a decade with their finger and oil wrote into the concrete. Interestingly, I could tell you some of the students who wrote them and like what they're doing in life now, and it's pretty cool. So anyway, it was precious for me. It just filled my heart to see our Cornerstone family helping there. And then, of course, those that were able to do the Guatemala trip, I mean, we had a lot of people helping with that.
Yeah, it was a full room.
Which is a great ministry expression, like a team that we're sending to do a great work there, and that so many of our congregation could help with that too. So anyway, it was a good Saturday.
Yeah, and I'll reinforce the camp part of it because I remember growing up at my AG camp that I went to, it was always cool as a camper when you came back and you liked the nostalgia of camp, but also when you saw oh, they upgraded this. Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. Like
Yeah.
it was always you got the sense of the feeling of like, okay, this is cool. Like they're adding this new stuff, or even
Right.
just simple things like lighting. I guess people don't realize from a camper's perspective how just those little things, they notice them and they're like, oh, that's cool. Like I'm glad they did that.
Well, we around here, a saying that I've had for years is love is spelled Details.
Mm-hmm.
Like details communicate love, and it was always important for me in that iteration of ministry, and now in this one, that we are detailed to the degree that people know that we care about them and we care about what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Details also reveal work. They reveal effort. That's part of the reason details spell, equal love, is because it's labor, it's time that you've invested to make it a little better, a little more meaningful. So, yep. It's good time.
Yeah, good weekend. Good service on Sunday. We were week 5 of
Yep.
Take the Land and walking through the journey with Joshua. And actually, this past Sunday, we went back in time.
Yes,
in
we
Joshua's
did.
story. And it was pretty important because
no would you rathers this time?
Oh, I'll get to those in a second.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. So I'm over here thinking like, but we'll do the would you rathers in a minute. Let's hear it. Go ahead. I interrupted you.
No, it's all good. Well, it's just interesting going back in time and just we've been through all these situations with Joshua, so it's like, well, okay, all these things happen, but the reason why all these cool things happen is because of his life.
Yes.
And we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, last week we did a little bit of summer would you rathers.
Okay.
And I said it was going to be a part of many because there's quite a few of them,
Yeah.
but we'll do a few today.
Okay.
Won't take up too much time, but just interesting ones that I thought would be kind of fun. And we had interesting ones last week. So if you missed the episode last week, you need to go back and not only listen to that for that sake, but you need to listen to the deep dive of last week's message because we got into a lot of really cool topics last week. But would you rather be a lifeguard or a carnival ride operator?
Oh my gosh. I guess in both of them you are responsible for people's safety.
Well, I mean, some of those carny operators,
Well,
they just.
I was gonna be kind about all humans.
Well, I mean, they're nice. I love them. They're nice.
I think a lifeguard because I think I would rather be at the beach or at the pool than standing around at a carnival for hours on end.
Yep.
I think I could probably be more effective at saving someone's life via swimming and all of that than because the carnival ride people, they have to put them together. They have to know the ins and outs of it on like safety protocols. Feels like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go lifeguard, but mainly because of the aesthetic. Like I'd rather be at the beach or at the pool than standing around at a carnival because that just like standing there, operating a ride over and over and over again.
Yep.
Feels a little tedious.
Yep. And I wouldn't want to. There was a reel that I was watching, and it was a carnival ride.
Yeah.
And it's the Ring of Fire. You're going upside down in this wheel.
Oh, yeah.
And someone loses their lunch.
Yes.
But the trajectory is they're going back down when they lose it. So it hits them again going down. And I'm just like, I don't want to be there for that or the ride operator.
Having to clean it.
Yeah.
Well, now I will say though, there's something to be said for being, at the carnival with the carnival food. Like if there's deep fried Oreos, I mean, corn dogs, whatever, you name it, like, some type of meat on a stick, I
love attending a fair. I would never want to work at a fair.
But there is a difference between a fair and a carnival.
Oh, you're right. Yep, you're right.
I think, right, the carnival is kind of the rides part of a fair. And a carnival, is liable to be, just randomly put together in Rivergate parking lot, Rivergate Mall parking lot. So a fair is different.
Yeah.
But I would, now the food part would be tough, but I think I'm going lifeguard.
Yeah.
And not that I feel super confident in my aquatic abilities, but I think that would be what I'd pick.
Speaking of the beach, would you rather get a really bad sunburn at the beach or get stung by a jellyfish?
Ooh, I've never been stung by a jellyfish.
Really? Okay.
So I don't know what that's like. I have been sunburned severely, and I could tell a story, and I might. But I guess when you get stung by a jellyfish, does it last a long time? Does the pain last
I
a
think
long
it
time?
depends on the jellyfish. Some of
Okay.
them are just like, I know some of them can just be like a really annoying itching,
Yeah.
but some of them can be like pretty painful depending on which one you get hit by.
Okay. I don't know. I guess it's how bad the sunburn. Michelle and I, our first, not our honeymoon vacation, but like our first year, like 1 year into marriage vacation, we went to Destin,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd never been, and we were young, and we we went out to the beach the first day, and we didn't put any sunscreen on.
Oh
We were geniuses.
no.
We just thought like, I mean, I'm like 21. We're
Mhm.
young. What do we know? We're invincible. And so we laid on the beach all day with no sunscreen on because we're getting a tan.
Oh.
And I don't think at that point in life we had a comprehension of like how the sun is different there and on the beach and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. And we laugh because we think now, being a little older and watching people, we think, I bet people around us were going,
Yeah, they're like,
they were
"Ooh."
watching us and they were like, as we got redder and redder, I bet people were like, oh, bless them. Oh, the poor things. Ooh, they got roast. So we get done with the day. We're going to go eat. We go to a restaurant. I don't remember the sequence of events, but like we're getting out of the car to go to the restaurant, and it's like I'm walking like I rode a horse. Like we're our clothes touching our skin are hurting. I'm pretty sure Michelle threw up at some point,
Oh, no.
because it was so bad. And so we were so burnt, like we were swollen.
Oh yeah.
And we went the rest of the week, like we couldn't hardly leave the hotel room. We were ordering pizza, takeout. We finally, on the last day, were able to get back to the beach. I slept on the couch with like one sheet on me. So you spend half the night freezing, but you can't stand anything more than the sheet
Yep.
on you. Yeah, that was miserable. So give me a jellyfish.
Yeah.
So sorry for everybody. I mean, I'm talking about couldn't walk,
Oh.
swollen, miserable, throwing up, all the things. Like, yeah,
Oh man.
it was awful.
Well, the last one is, would you rather travel abroad or do a staycation over the summer?
Ooh, abroad or the staycation. At this point in life, I think staycation.
Mm-hmm.
I can see down the road when the kids are out of the house, they're grown, where going abroad would be more appealing in what we would do.
Yeah.
Also, right now, I'm still early enough in trying to pastor this church that being around I probably need to, I need to stick around. And I don't have this big, I don't have this big wanderlust, and I don't mean
No travel
lust in a
bug.
bad way. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
have that. Like there are things that I want to see, but I'm just not dying to see them. I feel like there will be a time of my life when it's like, okay, it's time to go see stuff,
Yeah.
but I'm just not there yet.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would. I used to have a travel bug, and then one of my old jobs, I traveled quite a bit. And then once you travel quite a bit, especially for work, it's like kind of over it. I just want to be home.
Yeah, same. In my last gig, I traveled and preached a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking about it. I went yesterday to our district council, so I was on the road all day, and got home last night at like 7:30. And it was a little bit of a like flashback for our family because being the pastors of Cornerstone, I'd get up early Sunday morning, be gone all day.
Mhm.
I'd leave home on a Friday, not get back till Sunday night, Monday morning, that kind of stuff. And it was me and Neelan were talking about, kind of reminiscing on that. And it's just like our whole family is glad that's not our life anymore. It was our life and it was normal to us, and it
Mhm.
was all the kids knew. But now that we know a different thing, it's just like, oh man, I'm glad that's not what I have to do.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit of a homebody
Mhm.
by nature. Now we like going on vacations, family vacations and all that, but give me a staycation.
Yeah, and it's an important topic of staycation and being a homebody, because on Sunday we talked about remaining in the presence of the Lord.
Yes, nice
And
segue.
and having your own moment with the Lord and always continually being in His presence. And it was interesting the situation, because Joshua is like sometimes in those Bible stories, you imagine, oh, this person just popped up.
Yeah.
But you start to understand, no, they were there through the whole process. So
Yeah.
Joshua was there through the whole process of the wilderness. Of course, his name comes up with the 12 spies.
Yeah.
And, but still sometimes they're mentioned, then they disappear, then they come
Right.
back. And so you're like, oh, well, this person, they're just like there. And then
Yeah.
all this stuff happens. Like, no, they have all the context. They understand all the struggles. And in the midst of all of that, Joshua's interacting with Moses a lot.
Right.
He's outside the tent of meeting. He's doing all this stuff. And before we get into Joshua's, perspective on that side of his life, I thought it was interesting that Moses would go into the tent of meeting,
Yeah.
and talk with the Lord as if with a friend, face to face. And do we know if this was like was this like a I know in like the was it the tabernacle? It was like the Shekinah glory was there.
Yeah. They had the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
Glory of God. Yeah.
Well, was it something like that, or do we know? Was it like a theophany he was? Because when it says face to face, is it just an analogy, or was there an actual? Was the presence of the Lord more tangible than just how we pray today?
Yeah. I don't necessarily believe it was a theophany, which would mean a God appearance, or a Christophany, which would mean Jesus made an appearance. Like, for instance, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You know, the fourth man in the fire, he looks like the son of a God. That we believe that maybe Christ came ahead of time and revealed himself. But I think just you look at Moses on the mountain, and he said, I want to see your face, God. And the Lord put Moses in the cleft of a rock, put his hand over him, and passed by, and Moses saw the backside of God, to indicate that, no, you're not going to get to see me face to face, right? So I don't think it was a literal theophany. I think it was a communion between him and the Lord. But we also know that God spoke to him from a burning bush.
Yeah.
And so God came in the form of a fire and spoke out of that to him. And so I do believe that it was like we had the pillar of glory that settled over the tent of meeting. I believe there was a tangible, visible something that Moses was in on. And I believe he heard the voice. So I do believe that it was more than an inner witness, because we just have enough of Moses' history that there was a literal voice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I think to the degree that pre-Christ a man could have an encounter with God, like that's what he was having, But I would probably liken it to the burning bush, being on the mountain type deal.
Yeah, and it's interesting too that it said, and you made this point in your sermon, that everyone who wanted to make a request of the Lord would go to the tent.
Yeah.
I wonder, especially knowing the background of like Israel, the Israelites, and how sometimes they were pro God, sometimes they weren't so pro God just by nature of their their who they were. But I wonder how many people like actually took advantage of that opportunity, because it like today I feel like if you're like, hey, if you just go here, just have a convo, go to the Lord, and make a request of him at this tent.
Yeah.
I feel like we'd have a lot of people in the church be like, okay, I'm there. I mean, people come to the church for that.
Right.
And we live in a different context in the New Testament, but I wonder if there's any indication like how often people took advantage of that other than like Moses, Joshua, and people like that.
Yeah. And I don't know that we can know that. I think the fact that it was mentioned indicates that some did. I referenced it in one or both services, that the Lord invited Israel to the mountain, but they were freaked out and they were afraid. And so they said, no, Moses, you go handle this business. You go represent us, right? And so I think you have to look at it with the belief that probably the pervasive idea of Israel was, nah, we're going to keep our distance.
Yeah.
But it was God making himself available like he had done on Mount Sinai, and to this day, God makes himself available to the person that wants to approach him. And I think the revelation that we have now and the revelation that unfolded through the whole of Scripture is that God is more approachable than first believed. God is more accessible and available than maybe it was feared in the early days of Israel's relationship with the Lord. Israel, through the whole of the Old Testament, was learning God.
Yeah.
Right? They were learning him. You got to go all the way back to Abraham. It's like the first introduction, and you're starting a new relationship, and that relationships evolves over time, just like any relationship.
Yeah.
I think about the Torah, and you have the emphasis placed on sacrifice. But then you start getting into David and you get into the prophets, and they start saying stuff like obedience is better than sacrifice. That God seems to be more in, like, that sacrifice isn't the be all end all. It's the tenor of your heart. So they're starting to learn along the way a little better about the Lord as they go. You know,
and when Joshua is encountering all this stuff, you mentioned something in your sermon, and it's mentioned in the text too. He would be with Moses, but he would stay after Moses left to be in the presence of the Lord, to be near there. But I'm trying to liken it to today. Like today, it's an important structure in the church of having an overseer or a pastor, and especially if you're a young leader who wants to rise up and grow in that. How do you, it seems like Joshua, and I don't even know if there was an instance after Moses passed away where Joshua went, well, Moses would have done it this way.
Right.
Yada, yada, yada. If you're a young leader, you're speaking to a young leader, how does a young leader approach honoring an overseer or pastor or someone that they look up to and they want to be like in some respects, but at the same time, not being so fixated on them that they do what Joshua didn't do, which is, allow Moses to be relying on Moses to be their conduit for God in a sense,
Well, and I think the message basically speaks to that I preached on Sunday. For a younger leader, like you learn from Moses to go into the tent, but you have to be a tent person yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the Lord that becomes the Lord of your life and gives you confidence and gives you a sense of identity and reveals what's in you that's different than the leader you've been following. So that, in theory, the way it should be is by the time, it was ready for Joshua to take the reins, he had been learning from the Lord. He had been being prepared by the Lord for this task. And he had, even though he served Moses, he honored Moses, he revered Moses, like Joshua's greatest attachment and his greatest sense of and source of identity and validation and confidence was centered on being a man of God's presence, not a man in Moses' shadow.
Yeah.
And I think that's the give and take, the tension point of, if you are the Moses in this, I can't, I have to have enough security in me to not need them to need me.
Yeah.
Right. And every parent gets that. Like I am parenting to a certain end, and the end that I'm parenting to is them not needing me.
Yeah.
Right. Them being able to do it without me. And so that should be Moses's objective. That should be the older person's objective. Like, I'm trying to get you to the spot where you don't need me.
Yeah. The
nature of our relationship will change over time. And then the Joshua standpoint, as a Joshua, I need to have me and the Lord have a very deep thing, so that when Moses isn't available and accessible, I already can stand on my relationship with the Lord, and I'm confident in that. So, I'd say that's probably the best way to communicate that.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes I feel like it's a no-brainer, but at the same time, I feel like even if you're just a church attender, you can have the sense of, well, because they know so much, this person, whoever it is, that, oh, well, I can't, you almost put yourself, I guess, at a disservice in a sense of saying, well, because they know so much, or I don't know if I could ever attain their level of spirituality. So
Yeah.
I'll just go to them. But I think you've even mentioned a few sermons over the past couple weeks of like, this is for everyone. Like
Yes.
me up here is not, I'm not, I'm not the main, I'm not um,
The guru.
the guru on all this stuff. Is like, this is open to anyone.
Yeah.
You're leading us into that,
Right.
and into that understanding. So why does it seem like, and even me myself, sometimes I've struggled with that growing up in the faith of just like, I feel like I should be more confident in certain areas, but when people are confident in certain areas, it makes me feel like, well, okay, maybe I'll just go to them because maybe I can't figure it out without having X,
Yeah.
Y, and Z together. I don't know why we struggle with that.
It's the tension of, there's wisdom in the counsel of many.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is value in seeking advice. There's value in trying to glean from other people's wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, not being codependent on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
The only person God wants us dependent on really, is him.
Yeah.
Now, obviously there's dynamics when you're a parent, when you're married, like there's a degree of bond that creates a dependence and a help to one another. And so I'm not necessarily talking about that, but, I think for all of us, you kind of hit it on the head. It's our insecurities that our insecurities tend to do one of two things. Either like, I don't need advice from anybody because, and that, that insecurity manifests as pride.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want anybody, I don't want to let on that I have a weakness. I don't want to let on that I have which is ultimately insecurity, or
Yeah.
the insecurity of, I don't trust myself. I don't believe in myself.
Yeah.
And so, for me, leading, I've had a philosophy for years in leading that, there's only so much you can develop as a leader watching somebody else.
Yeah.
There's only so much that you can learn by being associated with or under or assisting another person to do a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I use it in the context of, somebody that wants to do youth ministry really, really well, and they go and they do an internship for 3 years with the best youth pastor you can find. That's well and good, right?
Yeah.
But what you can't do, and I think this is in all walks of life, you can learn from somebody who's went through grief. You can learn from somebody who succeeded in business. You can learn from somebody who has dealt with divorce. Like, you can learn from those people.
Mm-hmm.
But like, the one thing you can't learn is what they went through internally.
Yeah.
To make the decisions they made. Like, all of the barriers they had to break through in their mind, all of the stresses they had to overcome. I sat down with Brooks Till, who's the DYD, and he's the DYD that, is my heir apparent, I guess you could say, from being DYD. And, I told Brooks, Brooks was in the middle of it with me for years.
Yeah.
He helped me on so many levels. But I explained to him, like, you can watch everything I did, but you'll never, until you're the one in the seat and you're having to go through the same battles and the same hurdles and fight the same tensions and deal with the same issues.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you cannot know what it's like, because you look at the decision I made and you see the decision I made and are like, okay, you make that decision, but like, you don't know like all of the consequence of making that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And the friendships I had to put strain on to make that decision, or the internal fears that I had to overcome to make that decision, or the like counting the cost of when I make this decision. This is going to be some of the difficulty that comes from making the decision. So like, people, and that's again why, we're kind of talking in this vein of learning from somebody else, or, beginning to not live vicariously through someone. You can see decisions people make, but like, until you have to go through all the layers and all of the hoops, to make that decision for yourself. Like, oh, I just make that decision. I just do this. But when you're in the seat of making the decision, you might not be able to make that decision because there's things that you have to fight through you might not be willing to fight through.
Yeah.
And so I think even when we're learning from people, I think one, a good question to ask is, what did you do? How did you do it? But maybe a better question to ask is, what did you have to go through and work through and deal with to arrive at this decision and execute the decision?
Yeah.
Because it's in that now you're able to really evaluate yourself and determine, do I have the willingness? Do I have the guts? Do I have the stuff in me to make the right decision? And, the right decision is half the battle. Like, the other half the battle is getting all the crud out of you that's fighting against that decision, all the fears that are fighting against that decision, all of the, like, what am I going to have to sacrifice, to make that right decision? And so, I live in that day in, day out, making decisions for this church, and you look at a decision I make, and I really can only articulate, like this much of it.
Yeah.
Because decorum matters to me. Honor matters a lot to me. Being right before the Lord matters to me. So I'm pretty guarded in, like, how I communicate things when it comes to decision making. But there's always a lot of complexity behind big decisions, and most of the complexity is in me.
Yeah.
Right. So, which brings me back to why you got to be a person of presence.
Yeah.
Because it is in the presence of the Lord that all of the stuff that you would have to work through to make good decisions and to forge ahead in life, it's being dealt with. You're already deciding in the presence of the Lord that I'm going to pay whatever price.
Yeah.
Like, I'm finding in you a better thing so that I'm willing to sacrifice. I'm willing to, like, go past my fears. I'm willing to put tension on this relationship because my relationship with you is my ultimate relationship. It's in the presence that you become the type. It goes all the way back to the question I asked 8 million times in the message. How do I become the type of person that ...
Yeah.
It is in God's presence. It is being present to God. It is being very intentional, verbing, remaining. Like, it is verbing. It is verbing myself in the direction of God over and over and over again, so that I'm dead before I have to, kill anything to do the hard thing or to make the decision that's going to take me to the next level. Because in your dreams, your hopes, your aspirations, it's not just, I've said it several times, it's not just that God won't eliminate himself from the equation.
Yeah.
Like, there's always going to be a degree of miraculous needed because God wants to be a part of the process. There's always going to also be a degree of dying.
Yeah.
A degree of sacrifice, a degree of difficulty, a degree of pain, a degree of discomfort, a degree of surrender. And so you have to have in his presence already secured those decisions, those parts of the decision before you come to the big decision making of your life to go for it, right? I have to already have decided in his presence that I trust him and I'm going to have faith and I'm going to believe that he's going to do it before I move into the business venture. Like, I got to become the person that has faith along the way.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to already decide in his presence that I might not be able to see but the next step, but I'm going to take the next step.
Yeah.
Right. You become that kind of person. And so, anyway, I could get in, like, I love this. I love talking in this vein. I was thinking today, we look at people and them, living their best life, living in the promised land. And we see the talent that got them there. We see the gifting. We see the anointing. We see the resources. We see the connections. We see, a lot of the exterior of how they got there. But being great in my opinion, being great is not as much about what you accomplish as it is like how much did you maximize what you were given?
Yeah.
And you maximize what you were given by being dead to self,
Mm-hmm.
by like making tough decisions, by laying, putting your life on an altar, by working hard, by doing, and people don't see that part of it.
Yeah.
They're not privy to watch that. And it's one of the reasons we got to be careful making assumptions about how people got to where they are. Cause all we can see is, I mean, it's really cliched, but we can just see the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Um, and so it is in his presence, it is in remaining, it is verbing toward God that we are becoming the person that can do the things necessary that nobody really sees
Mm-hmm.
to get where God's taken us.
Yeah, and as we bring this to a close, we're talking about remaining in His presence and how that sets you up for your future, and it set up Joshua well for his future.
Yes.
But Joshua still had to take up the mantle and actually enact
Yeah.
everything he had been working on. And what you're just saying now is also people at some point there's an enactment of everything the Lord has invested in you.
Yes.
And it, like I was thinking about this the other day, is like I feel like people can so easily, because they're just now learning how to walk in some respects.
Yeah.
But they see someone who's running.
Yep.
They're like, well, I'm so far away from that, I just won't walk.
Right.
And then you're caught up, and this is a analogy. So if you're in a wheelchair, this is not but you would be in a wheelchair the rest of your life if theoretically if you never learn to walk.
Yeah.
You're probably never going to be able to use your legs to get to where you need to go to start running and everything.
Yeah.
Or if you're, that's a poor example, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about that the other day, is like, you can't just disqualify yourself from the promises the Lord has for you just because you're just now learning how to walk in your faith.
Absolutely. And that is where, and of course there's 8 million memes and gifs and things out there about the danger of comparison.
Yeah.
Right. And it is dangerous. And the biggest reason I've always said, like comparison is damaging either way.
Yeah.
Like when you walk into a room, if you're a person that does comparison, you will be simultaneously diminished and prideful.
Yeah.
Because you'll walk into a room and you'll look at some people and say, I'm doing better than them.
Yeah.
And there's a pride that's attached to that. So comparison puffs you up.
Yeah.
Then in that exact same room, there will be people who are doing better than you. So you feel diminished in their presence.
Mm.
And so now you are a diminished, prideful person. Like it's really hard to compare and contrast and it be good for your heart. What we would be better to do is to celebrate and glean.
Yeah.
Celebrate and glean. Like I celebrate where you are. Like where I am is irrelevant. I celebrate how fast you're running.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing. Right.
Yeah.
And hey, maybe I can learn how to run, from you, but I want to run.
Yeah.
I also don't want to spend my whole life celebrating you running.
Yep.
Like I want to run. Like
Yeah.
I want to learn how to run too.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think one thing that matters to me, and I hope I'm doing this, and I don't know that there's a good way to measure it. Maybe time will tell as testimonies of lives unfold, but I never want to communicate, articulate, live, create this aura or mystique about myself that makes people watch me run and feel like they can't.
Yeah.
They can't do that. I want with everything in me, like we said on Sunday, to say, bro, I'm just a kid from Covington.
Yep.
I have parents who are divorced. My dad didn't know the Lord until the end of his life. There's a grace on my life. There's a call on my life to preach the gospel and to lead and be an influence in his church. I feel like, God has raised me up as a gift, apostle, prophet, pastor, evangelist, and teacher. I fit into one of those categories as a gift to the church. And so there's a grace on me to pursue the things of God, maybe in an uncommon way. But I still had to work through all all of the reasons that I shouldn't be this,
Yeah.
just like anybody else does. And I'm not special. Like the Lord doesn't love me anymore. I don't have any built-in advantages. It's just a matter of, if you want him, come and get him. And
Yeah.
he's so available to anybody and everybody. And, and I don't think, and maybe some of the good of seeing spiritual leaders struggle in the public light, the last couple of decades, maybe one positive is like it does destigmatize the spiritual guru. And
Yeah.
like it, what's the old adage, the ground's level at the cross,
Yeah.
there's no hierarchy at the cross,
Mhm.
right? We're all, people that are just unbelievably grateful that we were lost and now we're found.
Yeah.
So to me, like if you see somebody running, whether it's spiritually, it's in your occupational field, it's in their marriage, in parenting, like if you see somebody running, what should rise up in you is inspiration.
Mm.
And if something other than inspiration rises up, if diminished, if defeat, if disappointment, if discouragement, if any of that rises up in you, then my advice is you need to go to the tent. Like you need to get in the presence of the Lord so that whatever it is that's causing you to respond to somebody else's well done is a negative response. Mm-hmm. Like that is not a healthy soul response. That is I need to be in the presence of the Lord. I need him to reveal what's in me, because in Christ, seeing people do well should excite us.
Yeah.
It should, and obviously there's a lot in scripture that talks about when the wicked are doing well. That's a different conversation, but like watching another brother or sister do well should make us go, let's go.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you. And if you can run, I can run too.
Yeah. And Joshua kept running because we went back in time, but now this week, are we going forward in time?
Yes, we're going forward. We're going to actually kind of fast forward to the end.
Yeah.
And, when you get into the text, it starts talking about some more battles, but they don't get as specific in detail. And the book starts talking about the land designations and all of that.
Yeah.
But we're going to get down to a very famous speech by Joshua, and it's Mother's Day. And I feel like this message will be really appropriate for Mother's Day.
Yeah.
I thought the one about remaining was appropriate for Grad Sunday.
Yeah.
If a student could grab it, if they were connecting all the dots in the moment. And then I think after that, I'll have one more message from the Take the Land series.
Awesome.
After that. So I think we got 2 more Take the Land series messages, and then we'll turn the page.
Awesome. Well, you need to be here this Sunday. It's going to be Mother's Day. So come, bring your mama if you and be here in person. But if you're not able to, you can watch us online on YouTube, Facebook, csnlive.org. Regardless, we want to see you here at church on Sunday. It's going to be a great day as we continue our series, Take the Land. And if you need anything, leave a comment. We'll pray for you. We're here for you. Just connect with us however you can. And we look forward to seeing you next time.